Okay, with call the meeting to order on January 15, 2020. Roll call. Oh, pledge allegiance first.
Yep.
Valerie, you get the honors.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Roll call.
Robert Eggers missing?
That's correct, has not arrived yet. All other commissioners noted present.
With your indulgence, I'm just going to be working on getting some stuff up on the web procedure.
Turn the mic on.
Okay. Any commissioner announcements?
Other than the comment, I believe that that should be put at the bottom of the agenda, correct? That's what our rules state. Did I not see that in there?
What is bottom of the agenda?
The order, commission discussion is item G. It should be moved to the bottom of the agenda or near the bottom of the agenda.
Commissioner, I beg your pardon, I'm not following where you're
Number
at.
8,
Yeah,
in the procedures for the transaction of business.
yeah, but that's during the public
I'm
hearing.
sorry.
I think we discussed when we made amendments to this the last time that we would move commissioner comments to the bottom portion of the agenda so that it wasn't first thing.
Oh, you're already to the department announcement items? Oh, I see.
Commissioner announcements.
Um,
I think in the beginning of the year when we took this up, I think that we moved commissioner announcements toward the end of the agenda. At least that was my recollection.
Well, as a body, you can recommend putting them wherever you wish to amend that resolution. I remembered it a little differently.
No? It's possible. Okay.
That's okay.
Well,
Okay.
we can take it up another time.
Department announcements?
Yes, today, being the first meeting of the new year, is a time for us to have election of a new chair and vice chair. And that is recommended that we do that at this point. So it is an item there, and that is from the same rule set that Mr. Commissioner Gibson is speaking from. So from that point, with 4 of you on the dais and Mr. Robert, never miss a meeting, you might tell Commissioner Eggers, right? Will there be a nomination for a new chair position?
I nominate Commissioner Eglin.
Do I hear a second?
I second that.
Okay. Also set forward. Commissioner Eglin, new chair. And, oh, we need a vice chair now.
Did we vote on it?
No, you don't vote on it, do you?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can vote on it.
Did-
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right,
Okay, now.
4-0.
We didn't have
Not
it
yet.
done vice chair
Not
yet.
No, we
All
haven't
right.
got vice chair yet.
All right, would you?
I
with the
nominate Robert Gibson for vice chair.
I second it.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
All right, so now that is the order, and
That's
if
the
you
order.
care to play musical chairs, we'll
The musical chairs now.
we'll take that configuration
Done.
right now.
Just got organized.
Do I have to move?
when Commissioner Eggers come in, you might let him know that he got the chairmanship and the vice chairmanship, and
Go.
so Commissioner Gibson will get you the little special tag that says vice chair. So with that, let's move to the second departmental announcement, which is basically confirmation of the Planning Commission calendar for the year 2020. But actually, before I move there, I did include the procedures for the transaction of business for the Planning Commission. And to Commissioner Gibson's point, the item number 7, the way it's written right here and was captured for that resolution, I believe you're taking, you don't believe that it's accurate. But number 7 says, as the point of the agenda labeled Commissioner Announcement, the members of the Planning Commission may report or announce information topics of interest to the general public and fellow commissioners. Such reports will not be project or applicant specific or subject to any final action. So Commissioner Gibson has suggested, if you go back to your, just your raw agenda format, that the commissioner announcements happen later in the agenda. Did you intend for that to be following public hearings and before or after a discussion item? Where would you recommend your commissioners place that comment section? Certainly prior to adjournment.
Probably right before adjournment.
Right before adjournment? As a body, did you want to discuss that for a moment?
I'd like to know what the reason, kind of logic on that?
Well, if we're expecting a long meeting, we usually skip them, just so that members in the audience can leave if they wish. And I'd rather have the opportunity to still have it at that meeting without prolonging the public's having to sit there.
Yes, I see. Do we have a second? Or do we need a second, or?
You know, I don't have a resolution in front of you.
Okay,
These are
okay.
not really
It just requires
bylaws. They're
agreement.
just kind of a resolution where we captured the transaction of business and basically it's more SOP, standard operating procedures. So it's as you wish. I don't think we need a public hearing or notice, but maybe we'd like to hear
Right.
from Joel,
Yeah.
County Council Elwood.
Mhm.
Excuse me.
Ellenwood. There
Ellenwood.
we go. You'll get it out. Good evening. The order of the agenda is really up to the discretion of the chair to alter the order of business within the items. And so, and typically as a courtesy, you may ask if there's any objection from any member of the commission, but that should be within the chair's prerogative to alter the order of business on the agenda.
All agreed?
Mhm.
Then we will postpone the announcements and discussion of the commissioners until later in the evening.
And as a regular recurring item, we'll have it appear towards the end.
I think so.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, then the next order of department announcements is just confirmation of the Planning Commission public hearing calendar for 2020, which is, I've listed out the dates there, but basically the third Wednesday of each month. So that's today, the 15th, and those are laid out February 19th, 18th. Where it generally gets awkward is in the November and December months. And this year, with it being a leap year in February, we've actually pushed, this last year it was, those holidays fell on Wednesdays. Now they're going to fall on Fridays. So basically the third Wednesday of November and the third Wednesday of December really don't have a conflict with holiday travel or things like that. So with the chair's blessing, or however we discuss such things, we can confirm these dates. I have lined up the television service already for the, expected to show on the third Wednesday of each month.
If I may, that should be subject to a motion and decision by the board. No resolution is required, it's simply a commission order
Okay.
to adopt the schedule.
I make a motion to adopt the dates per the summary on item number 2.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. So passed.
There it is. Okay, with that, Chairman, we are to
Approve the minutes, I believe.
we're into the next section. I've turned my pages so many times here.
Consent agenda?
What is the next item there, sir?
Have you approved the minutes from December?
No.
Oh, acknowledgement of the certificate of posting or consent agenda.
Mhm.
Looks like consent agenda is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we're looking. We have the
So, consent agenda.
certificate of posting, acknowledgement. And the consent, where's our consent agenda?
It's just on the,
Hmm? Oh, down at the bottom. All right. Acknowledgement of public hearing,
So acknowledged.
consent, do we have anything on the consent agenda?
Yes, what I'd like, if, through the chair, I just would like to say that the draft meeting minutes from December 2019 are there. And of interest to you might be that the final language to condition number 14 for the public hearing item that was held that night, which involved the public street frontage in front of the Sunny Slope Christian Church.
Correct.
And so we didn't wordsmith the last word here at the commission level
Correct.
that evening, but you shared with us the intent for how you wanted it to read. So here in the minutes are the language as we've presented it for the resolution and for signature. And should you wish to look at that language, it is included in your packet.
Mhm.
And there are subsequent exhibits there that
Okay.
are not necessarily part of the minutes, but just help you illustrate what was being proposed. So, in the cover memo to the minutes. Nope. Yep.
Are there any questions on the minutes?
no.
No? Do I have a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
I'm sorry, is that a,
I move to adopt the minutes as written.
I second that.
Yes, and the map.
All those in favor?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
okay. And so then I think all you're left with is a formal action on the whole consent calendar. So thank you for your corroboration on the language to those minutes, but maybe final action on the whole
Okay.
consent.
I move to adopt the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Passed. Okay.
Boy, it seems especially bureaucratic this evening, doesn't it?
Yes, it
Yes.
does.
Good
Yeah.
grief. All right, let's,
Okay.
So we're to the public hearing items.
there we go.
You want to acknowledge the posting of the notice of public hearing for the two items?
And
So the first item is, number 1 on the public hearing items, is item 4 on the agenda.
items brought before the Planning Commission to make minor changes to the county sign ordinance in the light of a Supreme Court case, Reed versus the town of Gilbert. In Gilbert, the Supreme Court decided that content based distinctions in signs is subject to strict scrutiny. Strict scrutiny standard of review indicates that it must be narrowly tailored to serve compelling government interests. And when you decide whether something is content-based, it's basically if you have to look at the sign and read the sign to determine what restrictions that sign is subject to, it's based upon the content of the sign. There is some difference in regulations regarding commercial speech, however. There are still some regulations that the county can make on signs. Some of the examples is set forth in the concurring opinion. That we can have rules regulating the size of signs, regulating the locations of signs, distinguish between freestanding signs and those attached to buildings, distinguishing between lighted and unlighted signs, distinguishing between signs with fixed messages and placements of signs on private and public property, et cetera. At some point in time, staff may wish to do a more global update of the county sign ordinance. I have to say that the sign ordinance has not been, not had very many issues in our county. I can't recall the last time that we had somebody make a complaint really based upon the sign. It must have been several years ago. But this draft ordinance that's attached makes the minor changes, really addresses the most immediate problems with the sign ordinance, and it makes relatively minor changes to a couple of the sections. One is which the section pertaining to election signs, so they're gonna be treated as temporary signs. And indicating that there's, the RMA director is authorized to grant administrative variances necessary to ensure this chapter is administrated in a manner consistent with the Reed versus Town of Gilbert matter. So I wanted to open it for public comments or questions from the Planning Commission. If you have any questions, I can answer them.
Okay, we don't have it. Do we have any testimony from the public? Okay. Any comments from the board? Mhm. I noted on number 3, the third section changes the allowable time period for
Yes.
temporary signs
Yes.
from 30 to 100 days. Is that effective immediately?
No, it will be effective after the board adopts this ordinance, so it'll be effective 30 days after the adoption. It did have some relevance, as in political signs. The state law allows political signs to be posted, I guess, at least in the state right away, 90 days prior to the election. Our local code at 60 days. But there was no complaints about that and no enforcement of that. So as far as the election signs, this will actually be in effect 10 days after, 30 days after the board's adoption of it.
So would it affect the election signs that are out there?
No, they're still under current regulation.
Very good. Any discussion?
No.
Seems relatively straightforward.
Can we have a motion? To adopt?
I make a motion we adopt the sign ordinance
Just adopting the resolution at this point.
with the resolution, yes.
Mhm.
County Council Thompson and Chair, did you need the public to weigh in
I
on a
don't think,
recommendation of a ordinance change to the board?
nobody had requested to speak on this matter.
Thank you.
It's pretty straightforward and pretty limited in this review. At some point in time, we may do a more global review of this, but it's pretty limited in scope at this time.
It was very interesting, all the case study that you presented with it.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't want to wade or read it totally through, so I just kind of caught bits and pieces, and yeah, I found it rather interesting, the logic in the sign
It
ordinance.
is interesting, and some counties are still struggling with this about how to implement it.
I'm sure, the church and the signage and, yeah.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, the planning commission hereby recommends adoption of the proposed ordinances. Yes. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes.
Through the chair, I forgot to mention in part of the agenda before we go on to our next and last item that one of the general protocols is that we open the microphone to the public for
Right,
items not appearing on the agenda if they had anything, if anybody needed to speak to something.
Yes, I noticed that. Before we go on to the next item, should we have, if there is any public comment that someone came here to speak on? Are there any cards? Are there any speaker cards
For general public comment?
from? All right, then we'll wait for those. Yeah, I'm not seeing anybody jump up. Okay, very good. Okay,
Those
Uh,
are the next.
but that's not on the sign ordinance. Oops.
May I help clarify? Is there anybody here wishing to speak to an item that's not the hemp or the sign ordinance or the discussion items that are agendized here today? Thank you.
Yeah, this is all but. We'll proceed to the public hearing. Let's see, that would be Barbara Thompson on the hemp ordinance. Is that correct? Shall we proceed to that?
Good evening. I'm Joel Ellenwood, Assistant County Counsel, and I've been working with staff and the Board of Supervisors Ad hoc Committee on drafting proposed amendments to the hemp ordinance. And just as a bit of background, the first year of legal cultivation of hemp in California pursuant to the State Industrial Hemp Farming Act occurred this last season. That was pursuant to state law which required registration or notification to the Agricultural Commissioner's Office. The county actually adopted a hemp set of hemp regulations, but that was not adopted until September. So, at the end of the cultivation season, so it really didn't affect the operations of hemp in the first year. But in that first year's experience, a number of problems came to the attention of the Board of Supervisors, which caused them to establish an ad hoc committee. The ad hoc committee recommended that the board adopt a moratorium on hemp cultivation in the county. That was adopted on December 10th, and at the same time initiated a series of meetings with staff and then ultimately with stakeholder groups, including representatives of the Farm Bureau and other agricultural interests, the wine industry, the hemp cultivators and processors, and the general public, some residents who had experienced problems related to hemp cultivation. So that stakeholders meeting met on January 5th, I believe it was, and the recommendations from the staff developed amendments seem to be well received. The next step in the adoption process is the public hearing to be conducted tonight with the review of the proposed changes by the Planning Commission and conduct a public hearing again for anyone who wishes to provide comment, and then a consideration by the commission and adoption of a resolution making recommendations to the board. Attached in your package is a summary of the First is a markup of the existing hemp cultivation ordinance. It's sort of red line strikeout, so the changes are highlighted in red and with some highlighted portions of it as well. But there is a one-page summary of those draft amendments, and I'll go over the pertinent points of that summary with you now. Generally speaking, the problems identified were related to strong odors associated with hemp cultivation that led to complaints from residential areas, and also with respect to the the wine overlay zone and visitors serving facilities in the wine overlay, tasting rooms, wineries, beds and breakfasts, that sort of thing. And so a principal approach to remedy that would be to identify those areas and have a setback of a buffer zone of 1 mile from those facilities. So the mile buffer zone is established around the sphere of influence of the 2 incorporated cities, and a mile buffer zone around any county service area, which are generally associated with rural residential subdivisions throughout the county. And the results of those setback areas are illustrated in the map that's on the display here. And we can zoom into certain areas. Let's see, this doesn't have that pinch capability, so. So the areas shown in the salmon colored are an illustration of the exclusion zone. The dotted purple line is the area of the wine overlay, the wine district overlay, and the green dots are representative of school bus stops. And under the previous ordinance, there is a 1,000-foot setback from school bus stops, so we put those on the map as well. In addition to those conflicts, the sheriff's office had a number of service calls, including some high-speed chases, CHP intervention, helicopter interdictions, and so on, resulting from people coming to the area to hemp cultivations near county roads or state highways, and thinking that they were and stealing from the crops, thinking that they were stealing cannabis when it was actually hemp. The problem being, unless you do a laboratory test, you can't tell the 2 types of plants apart. They look the same, they smell the same, they have same type of flower, and so on. And hemp, of course, has less than 0.3% of THC content, which is the compound that gives people the high, if you will, from cannabis, which is not present in industrial hemp. So in order to prevent those kinds of the vandalism and theft and associated crime problems, the recommendation was to establish a 500-foot setback from the road, so that people couldn't just pull over and jump out of their car and try and steal plants. So one of the things that the ad hoc committee would like the advice of the commission on is one alternative for just because most of this cultivation is outdoors in open fields, whether or not a reduced setback should be allowed if there is a 6-foot fence that would prevent people from going into the cultivation area, and some kind of visual screening so that it wouldn't be apparent what was growing there. And the visual screening could be again, we'd like your recommendations with that, whether that's like chain link with slats, which is not necessarily very attractive, or solid wood fences, or some kind of vegetative screening of plants. Some people grow sorghum or corn or some other crop in a buffer zone of, say, 6 feet or so, that prevents people from seeing that there's hemp growing on the other side of that vegetative barrier. Some kind of visual screening. So those are something that the ad hoc committee would like your feedback on, what the reduced distance should be and what kind of fencing or visual barrier should be included. So that explains the hemp cultivation exclusion zone. There's also a problem associated with drying or processing facilities where hemp after harvest is brought to a place to be dried out prior to processing, and odors associated with that. It's not where it's cultivated, but where it's being processed. And for those, the draft amendments includes a requirement of a conditional use permit, and in certain areas they'd have to be broadened notice requirements for that. For example, in the wine overlay zone, that would have a 1 mile notice requirement for a conditional use permit application, so that any conflicts in uses could be identified and people could come forward with proposed either conditions of approval or recommendations for denial for facilities within that distance. One of the problems with the way state law is written and the way the U.S. Farm Bill that was enacted at the end of 2018 conflict with one another is on the area of research. The state had a 2-part definition of what a research of hemp cultivation could be, and the federal government has narrowed that definition to having accredited universities or colleges have to be associated with it. The broader definition under California state law allowed public or private institutions engaged in agricultural research. So basically, somebody could self-identify themselves as being a research institution, and then grow 100 acres without really any bona fide agricultural research activities associated with that. They were harvesting it for commercial sale and essentially using a loophole in the state law. So what's proposed in the in the draft amendment is to prohibit research cultivation altogether, and essentially make people follow the state law with respect to commercial cultivation of hemp. Other highlights of the draft is to require a written consent of the property owners for registration for cultivation areas or application for CUPs. The registration is with the Agricultural Commissioner's Office. The Agricultural Commissioner, Karen Overstreet, is here today, and her staff, and they're available to answer questions that you might have concerning their experience with hemp cultivation in the county during this first year. The minimum parcel size for cultivation is increased from 10 acres to 20 acres. Two contiguous 10-acre parcels under the same ownership could be combined to meet that requirement. Residential setbacks are increased from 100 feet to 1,000 feet. again, to reduce conflicts from odor and other traffic and other problems. And that from a residentially developed parcel, regardless of zoning, right now it would have to be zoned for residential use, but many of the residential uses throughout the unincorporated part of the county are still zoned AP, even though they're 4 and 5 acre residential subdivisions. Signage, there's a requirement for a uniform sign to be adopted by the, specified by the Agricultural Commissioner's Office that clearly identifies the crop as being hemp and not cannabis. And that would have to be posted at frequent intervals around the circumference of the cultivation area, so as to make it clear to the public that this is hemp. If you steal it, you're not going to get, and smoke it, you're not going to get high. So leave it alone. And transportation, that harvested hemp would have to be in trucks that were covered or otherwise secured, so that it wasn't resulting in litter from the material leaving the vehicle onto the highway, spillage. Another requirement would be for post-harvest field treatment to make sure that any remaining hemp or stubs or would be tilled in, would be, excuse me, shredded and then incorporated in the soil to remove any residual odor after harvest. And lastly, consent to entry, inspection, and additional testing in order to prevent people from essentially disguising cannabis grows with hemp grows, and to enable law enforcement to be more effective. So those are the highlights. I'm available to answer questions, and again, the staff of the Agricultural Commissioner is here to respond to any questions you may have. That's all I have as far as a presentation is concerned. You can also open the matter, open the public hearing for public comments, and you'd want to do those before you begin your deliberations.
Mhm. Thank you very much. Is there any testimony from the public or comment from the public?
We have Russell Dotson is the first speaker.
May I ask how many speaker cards you have approximately?
5 so far.
Mm-hmm. And staff would also like a chance to speak.
It's your job.
Congratulations, Madam Chairwoman. Good
Thank
luck
you.
this year. Thank you, and welcome I'm welcoming the planning commissioners to your New Year's agenda. Thank you for holding a public hearing on this hemp ordinance amendment. I'm Russell Dotson, 2038 Old Airline Highway, Piscinas, the Oak Hill Ranch, as it would be known. I farmed outdoor hemp this past season on the farm. As the county agriculture department has stated several times, we were a responsible grow that caused no issues for the county or the public, including the sheriff's office. Yet this season, my farm falls within the wine hospitality priority area, and now I'm at risk of not being able to farm this hemp this season, or at least not able to start the farming process of specifically reserving plants or seeds, as there will be a shortage this year because the second season is going to be much more active statewide, regionally, central coastwide, and time is of the essence. Because the current proposal, the amendment has me falling into this county wine hospitality priority area, I'll need a CUP application to be filed and processed through the county. And I'm glad to hear that it's through Ms. Karen Overstreet's department. I suspect we'll have some success with that. But CUP is an unusual document for farming. Most farming commodities don't require a CUP to farm. CUPs are for things like restaurants, where they have hours of operation issues, drive-through issues, parking lot lighting, whatever. So I feel it's a bit unreasonable to drop straight to this, let's get a CUP for hemp farm growers in certain regions. And with the county's history of not managing the process, it'll be difficult. But I trust the Ag Department will do a good job. The wine hospitality priority area may be a good intended project, but is not proven to serve its purpose. More wine grape vineyards have been removed in the last 20 years than have been planted in this area, and no wineries or tasting rooms have been opened. I used to have 85 acres of Chardonnay grapes on my farm. I had to ship them out of the county as no local wineries would purchase my grapes, and the largest county winery just 4 miles up the street from me presses more out-of-county grapes than in-county grapes and is merely storage for a large Central Valley winery operation. It's not a viable means of working with the hemp farmers in South County to use this map as a no-grow zone. The wineries and wine tasting rooms can be protected by specific radiuses or less dramatic measures. The hemp and wine industries can cohabitate in the county, but to give such preferential treatment to one crop over the other is not right. What could be next? The smelly garlic? Thank you for listening to my situation. I hope you will make a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors that may remove the wine hospitality area map, protect the wineries, the wine tasting rooms, in a more reasonable manner for us to move forward with our hemp production in this county. Thank you.
Thank you. Well timed.
So Kevin Moore?
Good evening, Commission. It's in my opinion, the wine hospitality overlay is taking out way too much viable, usable ground. There's 3 sensitive wine hospitality areas on Cienega Road: Calera, Eden Rift, and DeRose. By us taking all this viable, usable ground out of the area and making us and the growers go through the CUP process. I personally experienced the CUP process. It took me 2 years for San Diego County to vet a conditional use permit for a farm. And we don't have 2 years. These farmers don't have 2 years to figure out their next crop. They're under time restraints on seed and seed production for their crops coming up in May and June, and they need to make decisions by the end of January. And I personally don't agree with the wine overlay. That's the only issue here is the area to please take a look at this area of map that takes out a lot of viable, usable ground for these farmers. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Christian Pillsbury?
Hi there. Thank you very much for holding this hearing. Thanks so much for welcoming us here this evening. I think I don't want to play counterpoint to the needs or rights of San Benito farmers to do what they do in a legal and responsible way. So in representing the wine growers on Cienega Road, I represent Eden Rift, and then there's also Calera and DeRose, as was just stated. We have no problem with cultivation of hemp, in San Benito. For us, it's really just the impacts of crime, trash, stench, and other negative externalities that have hit right close to home, within a mile of where we live and work. It's been dramatic for us this last year in terms of the number of sheriff's calls, in terms of the response we're getting from our visitors, and with the amount of investment that the county and our businesses have made over the past decades, really. This is a huge and existential threat. I don't think anybody's asking to stamp it out. I do think that a conditional use permit makes a lot of sense because it gives us some sort of voice. We wouldn't be having these hearings at all if the last 3 months hadn't been catastrophically bad. And it's only a couple of bad actors. I mean, when you ask the sheriff's department about their instance of complaints, it only affects, what was it, 4 out of 26 processing units? So, I mean, that means 22 processing units have absolutely no complaints whatsoever. I don't see why this should impact them at all. So I do think a conditional use permit process makes a lot of sense, and I think it's a very fair-minded response to a problem. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Michael Halpern?
Hi, good evening, Michael Halprin. I've been farming in this county for 30 years and recently retired, and 2 of my parcels are being impacted that I now rent out, and they're impacted. 2 hemp growers are on them. One of them won't be there next year, but the other one is hopeful. I guess I initially hoped that the right to farm ordinance both the state and California would protect us, but it doesn't appear to be the case. I believe most of the complaints came from people who my realtor says signed an agricultural community disclosure when they bought their property. So the disclosure advises or is both educational and I assume binding. It advises people that, you know, buying a house near to a farm could have impacts, and so now those people are having those impacts that maybe none of us expected, but they're having those impacts. They signed a binding agreement. Now they're making complaints, and so I think if you are addressing their complaints, you're letting them out of a binding agreement with the county. And so which binding agreements with the county should we expect will be honored? The second thing I wanted to talk about was the captain from the law enforcement who spoke about, well, crime happens on the hemp farms when the hemp is ready to harvest. And, well, I've been experiencing that for 30 years in Hollister. My vegetables aren't stolen until they're ready to harvest, so whoopee-doo. He also stated that possibly crime is higher in areas where housing is, or where the hemp operation that was near to houses had higher crime. Well, between 2010 and 2016, we lost $60,000 worth of equipment and supplies from the Riverside Union area. And so if he wants to present statistics on crime, he should say, well, has it gone up, gone down? You know, are there more felonies, less felonies? Just throwing numbers that hemp farms are being hit when their crops are ready to harvest doesn't really tell us anything. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Patrick Witt?
Hello. My name's Pat Wers. I'm a wine grape grower in the Cienega Valley, and I'm also recently past president of San Benito County Farm Bureau. Looking at your map here, I think this map needs to be tweaked quite a bit. The 3 wineries which have been mentioned have been impacted by smell, but pretty much the rest of that area, they do not have any tasting rooms or hospitality areas. And so I think what we need to do is to go back and kind of rework where we want to have these setbacks. Eden Rift, Calera, and DeRose are all within 2 or 3 miles of one another. And the main problem that they've had was the smell coming out from a drying area, I believe. As far as the trash and the blocking of driveways and all the other complaints, I've been in the farming business my whole life. And those kind of issues aren't hemp issues. They're the responsibility of the farmer, the processor, the labor contractors, and those people. You can't blame the hemp for that. You can blame it for the smell. It's an annoyance. But I think if in that drying facility there in the old Almaden Barrel Warehouse where I used to work, if they had some way of scrubbing the area, the air, to get rid of the nuisance value of the smell, I believe that would alleviate the problem. Outside of the setbacks away from the roads, Doug Williams and I had talked about exactly what was mentioned here as far as putting a fence, visible barriers. Some of the other setbacks, I think we can work with, but some of those, the 500 foot, I think is a setback away from the roads is a little bit excessive. And I think if they can alleviate some of the smell around the drying area, maybe just make it a storage area where after it's already dried, be able to move it in there where there isn't any smell. I think that would probably alleviate the problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
No more speakers.
Maybe.
We need a card.
You don't, actually, I said I would give it to you in a second, so. Do you want me to have him go first, and you want me to go get it? I was gonna announce my
Let
name.
him go first, and then I can get your card. Craig Spillman?
Hello. Hello, my name is Craig Spillman, and I just wanted to comment in regards to, I fall within the wine trail area, and if a CUP is required, would it be possible to streamline that process?
Can you stand a little closer to your microphone?
I'm
Or
sorry.
else make sure it's on. There should be a
No, it's
little
on.
green light down
There we
there.
go.
Okay.
Would it be possible to streamline the CUP process if that is something required in these wine trail areas? Possibly like a checklist. I mean, it's, for my circumstance, it's row crop farming. You know, if I can show that I have the offsets, doesn't need to be a real prolonged process. Just my concerns as an operator in the area.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners, and congratulations, Commissioner Engelland, for being the chair.
Thank you.
Happy New Year, everyone. I've been an advocate for hemp for years, since day zero, before anybody in this room was even talking about hemp. And one of the things early on that I was very adamant about is the fact that this was illegal. This was completely legal. This was going to be people that were going to come in here. They were going to be good neighbors. And unfortunately, the reason why we're here today is because we did not have good neighbors. And those good neighbors have now hindered the possibility of these other good neighbors to be in business. So this ordinance is really strict. It's amazing, and I'm surprised that the wine hospitality overlay didn't mention what happened in Sonoma, which is what, in Sonoma County, this is what happened. Cannabis and hemp are prohibited because it is a multi-million-dollar industry. Unless we have these 3 wineries that are actually bringing the economic development that hemp can bring to this industry, I think we need to balance that out. I think we can all work together. I think the hemp industry can work together with the wine industry. It's not going to hinder one or the other. Unfortunately, what they have is they have a bad neighbor. And if this neighbor has to go through a CUP process, he will have to go through a CUB process, and he's going to have to prove and show that he will become a good neighbor, and I believe that he would. I believe that he will do this. The process of having to go through a CUP, we all went through this with the cannabis. It was a mess. Some of these people that are here today that are now hemp growers, they made millions of dollars when the county made zero. It cost the county a lot of money. And what we need to do is we need to figure out how can the county benefit from this. It's not going to benefit from cutting all these people off from being able to have their businesses in the wine area. What we need to do is we need to know how to figure out to get this going. These guys are running out of time. And I think we can have the ordinance can be extended up for a year. We're talking about 45 days and it's going to be a year. So we're trying to work something out. And if they can apply for this within a reasonable time, and it's going to be on an individual basis, it'll be able to cut that part off so we can go forward with this ordinance and they can come back on a one-to-one basis on a CUP, because that's the only way that I can see that everybody can benefit instead of no one being able to continue to grow or have any kind of business in hemp in the county.
Thank you. Are there any more cards? No? Are there any further comments?
Just, if I may, just to respond to the comment that I believe Mr. Dobson made, the CUP process that's contemplated under this ordinance would be before the Planning Commission, not the Agricultural Commissioner. The hemp registration process, which is required by state law, is through the Agricultural Commissioners, but in certain areas where a CUP would be required, it would have to be through the Planning Commission. And I believe Mr. Kinnison Brown had some additional comments.
Yes, I had a few comments for thought. So I'm county land use planner. I process conditional use permits and land use reviews, which would be the second tier here past the Agricultural Commissioner's office if someone just couldn't meet the standards that are being developed today. And so a conditional use permit is just that. It's a condition. If I could just editorialize for a moment, all right? We don't have a church district, right? But it might fit in a residential zone. It might fit downtown. It might fit in an industrial area. So a conditional use permit is how can we allow this new thing, this new venture to happen without the neighborhood deteriorating? How can you find the right mix? So if you built a church that was too big and no one had parking, so somebody couldn't have their guests over, that's not going to fit. If all the development standards are happening on that property and the neighborhood lives in peace, everybody goes, they're a great neighbor. Let's all get this together. So I think what a lot of the discussion here is kind of where we're using numbers, setbacks and things like that, is really performance standard. If it was a mile away, we wouldn't smell it. If it was 1,000 feet off the street, we'd have less theft. If these types of things. So there's a couple things here that Mr. Ellenwood, if you could just catch, that I want to consider. So with the 1,000-foot setback, there's an offer on the table that the Planning Commission may consider that if an applicant was willing to put in a fence or a visual screen, that they wouldn't have to lose that 500 or that 1,000 feet. That's a lot of land area. You know, you go 100 feet across the property and 1,000 feet back, that's an acre of land right there you've lost. So if it's got a visual screen so that it reduces the chance of theft, they're wondering if that could be built into the Agricultural Commissioner's standards. The irony there is if you've done such a good job at screening, why would you add a sign every 50 feet that says, this is hemp? All right, so I would add that we probably add that discretion in a use permit review, that if someone's done a great job with a visual screen, we don't have to tell everybody that there's hemp on the other side of it, because they're going to, oh, really? Maybe they're just trying to confuse me because it's really cannabis. I don't know. but you got those discretionary actions. It was an interesting idea about how to prioritize or expedite a conditional use permit process. And as I'm thinking about it, what we're thinking about is the front door with the ordinance, there's, 1,000 feet away from this, 1 mile, away from the bus stops, et cetera. So that's a set of performance standards. And the way it's written is if you can't quite meet that, then apply for a conditional use permit. And we're going to be trying to think through, those qualitative and subjective things. Will it be smelly? Will it present a hazard? Will it affect the other businesses that are already in business? And so if a conditional use permit, where we're automatically would say, well, we've got to put you through this time and this delay and everything, but at the end of the day, we're going to require you to put a fence in. We're going to, reduce the odor by, tree breaks, wind breaks, or a roof, or a ventilation system. What if instead of a use permit, that we just had this second tier of things that people know if they wanted to do business over there, they'd have to have it, sorry for the word, more neighborly or, with less effects. You have more security or a better sign or something like that. So if there was basically just a set of standards that you wanted to apply in a hospitality district so that a hemp grow wouldn't, waft, have it, right into the tasting room and everybody's smelling skunk instead of all those nice terms you use for bouquets of wine. I can't even imagine that. So it might be through a little more work that if you had additional development standards, that would reduce a conditional use permit or the burden to go to the planning commission with all the public notice. It probably could be done. Or you even, as it was pointed out, is the hospitality district is very large. Are we going to have wineries and tasting rooms in the whole area, or should we get a little more surgical with where a secured grow could go that wouldn't have the security effects or the odors and things like that? So I don't think it's out of the realm of us working that out, but you really got to, takes a little money and time and patience to walk the land and draw your maps. Mr. Ellenwood and some of the growers, could you share me, I've been hearing something about the drums beating at the end of January with like seed determinations or some kind of purchase that's pretty imminent that you need some kind of direction from the county at this time.
Kevin can best speak to it. He's a seed grower, transplant grower.
Would you come to the front, please?
I'm just trying to think of, if you're going to refine an ordinance or you're going to give direction on what you want staff in a final ordinance, I'm trying to think of the timelines and the needs of industry here as well.
Give us your name again for the record.
Kevin Moore.
Thank you.
So the time sensitive, it takes about 8 weeks to 12 weeks to take a seed, germinate that seed, and to make that seed into a viable plant. Germination rates sometime can fail, so then you have to re-germinate the seed. So then you've got another few weeks on top of that. It just, as far as farming goes, there's a lot of planning that goes into farming. Leasing ground, buying irrigation equipment, setting up the irrigation design. There's a lot of different tools that go into planting a field than just dropping a seed in the ground. There's many months of planning. As far as the plants and seed, like I said, there can be germination issues, and there's only a limited amount of seed available to the public that is viable, good CBD, low THC seed available to the public as well. So a lot of times what happens, these seed breeding companies or plant companies, they run out of stock. So then the farmers are scrambling, looking for their plants and their seed. So when you only give them a certain amount of window, if this doesn't come into effect late January, early February, it's gonna kick everybody back until May, June. If this ends up going that far, it's not gonna give the farmers enough time to reserve their seed. A lot of these companies require upfront deposits on their seed to guarantee the farmer to have the seed. So these farmers, I don't see them wanting to reserve their seed if their money's, first of all, non-refundable. And if this ordinance doesn't get passed through, the farmer is essentially just giving away their deposit and their money for the seed that they had planned for their crop. Does that answer
Does that
some
clarify?
questions?
Just, I thought it was really
Anything
good
else,
just
anybody?
to hear the mechanics of that so that we know what they're working with. I don't necessarily have a remedy.
Are you saying that it is 8 to 12 weeks?
8 to 12 weeks to take a seed to make it into a viable plant to plant into the
Maturity.
ground. To
Is
take
it-
that plant and transplant it into the ground.
Oh, my goodness. Then after that, how long till harvest?
From that time, if you're planting in June, you harvest between September and late October. So it's,
Thank you.
it's crucial that this gets taken care of. It's a time-sensitive matter.
Right. Board, anyone have any questions about the plant? No? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have a question for staff through the chair. What was the basis for saying no hemp cultivation in the San Benito Wine Hospitality Priority Area unless you get a CUP? It seems like a rather broad area of land, just to say, you know, here's a burden we're going to place upon you for growing an agricultural commodity, and it just seems like a undue burden.
Well, the thought process through the staff group and the ad hoc committee of 2 supervisors was that the general plan established the wine hospitality area to encourage the development of a wine industry, and that because of the externalities of smell from hemp, outdoor hemp cultivation, that they were in conflict with one another and that they should be separated. So you have one area of the county where you want to encourage development of a wine industry, and other areas of the county where there's no conflicts, where you can encourage the development of the hemp industry. So it is a policy choice to essentially segregate the 2 segments of the agricultural industry generally. Hemp in one place, wine in another.
Thank you.
What I'm hearing from comment is that there are like 4, maybe a half a dozen entities within the wine country that are problematic, and the rest seem to be less. Has there been some kind of a count on that?
I can't speak to that. Perhaps the agricultural commissioner can.
Oh, very good.
Yeah, we had probably 26 sites throughout the county, spread throughout north and south side of the county. The growing grounds for cultivation that were in the wine area did not cause a problem. We had a drying facility that was very closely located to the wine tasting rooms themselves that created the biggest problem there. The other complaints came that ones that were located too close to residential, the CSAs and so forth, and the neighborhoods were complaining about the odor.
Through the chair.
Yes.
So maybe there should just be a restriction on the drying or where to establish the drying room instead of where to plant the hemp. If that's a problem. You know, there's 26 wineries or something, only 4 are complaining. So maybe they should have some restrictions where you can dry the product.
May I ask an open question of the growers, is what, if you had a roofed structure, how large would it have to be for drying purposes? And would there have to be one for each farm? Or could there be a central co-op kind of thing? I don't know this at all. And maybe someone could speak to that. Because if you had a closed structure with kilns or heat, you know, you can control and filter odors and have those adjacencies. But of course, there's the expense, and I have no idea on the economics.
Russ Dotson again. I farmed on my farm next to Doug Williams' farm. I'm also part of the warehouse system, the almond and barrel room that dried the products. I'm part of that program as well. It's a 145,000 square foot facility, the main original wood building. We dried about 190 acres of product in 140-some thousand square feet through a drying room system with fans and dehumidifiers and heat. It's not practical to say you can grow 140 acres and dry it in a 1 acre barn somewhere. It's more intense than that. And yeah, the process, the cultivating, the growing of this product produces a smell similar to garlic when it's been on my property. It is one and the same. It's like, oh my God, I'm never growing garlic again. Now I'm growing hemp. So it doesn't smell the same. I think garlic smells way worse, and I'm not a user of hemp. But it is an intense process to dry. We're working on another facility. Our facility across from Christian's place would be used much less intensively, and we'd be way better neighbors. And I'm not trying to stick up just for my processing, but to answer questions. It's an intense process to dry this. Other farmers were finding buildings, warehouses, turkey barns, and drying whole plants. We dried what was called buck product. We took the flower and a small amount of foliage with it and dried it and used the rest of the plant for other purposes. You can dry whole plants like they do in Oregon regularly. That takes an extreme amount of space in a barn and barns and warehouses and stuff. The processing is evolving. It's a very challenging product to grow, and then once you grow it, you have to find a home for it. And that was the whole catch this year. Everybody wanted to grow it, and then it was like, uh-oh, now what do we do with it? And there was no processors other than our major facility, and we only did it in-house. We didn't have enough space to take on somebody else's grow. Next year we will at a different facility. Extraction is the #1 process of taking this product. You extract it into isolate and distillate and sell the oil, so people are making shampoos and lotions and salves and stuff like that. We have a smokable product that goes into the same kind of uses where people use it for anxiety, sleep disorders and stuff. We will have more processing in or out of this county to help this county with moving stuff to places other than across from Christians. This wine overlay, if I can just go off topic real quickly again for my farm, the wine overlay, that hospitality priority area, good intentions. We would love to have 20 wineries and 20 tasting rooms and be Napa or Sonoma. We're not. It didn't come to that. Franchoni pushed over his grapes. He planted on Pinoch Road. He pushed everything on Cienega over. I pushed all mine over. The winery I moved in next to, Grand Met owned, now Diageo and then Treasury and then on and on and on. They pushed over 250 acres the year I moved in. They've never replanted, and they're not going to replant. So we want to protect the people we have that are doing a great job in this county, that grow grapes, press, produce great wines, have wine tastings, and sell wine. But to say that we need a wine overlay that large to protect them, the industry is not expanding, and Christian can speak to that. If it's going to expand, I'm not aware of it, but like I said, the largest almond and winery that got left behind is now owned by a Central Valley wine grape group, and they press more out-of-county wines than they do in-county wines, and it's really a storage facility, and there's no tasting there, and that's what I live by. I don't live by Christian stuff, and we don't farm near Christian, and he couldn't smell my grow. He could smell our processing, and we'll deal with that, Christian. I promise. Any questions? It really is an evolving industry. and processing on the other side of it, which has caused, half of the grief has been over the processing because the three wineries have a very loud voice in this county, and rightfully so. We have good labels, and they do a good job. The people that grew too close to homes caused most of the grief for the growing side. People did not know I grew on my property. I'm off the beaten path. We never had a plant stolen. The sheriff never got called to my property. There were a lot of things we did right. We worked with Karen and her group. We were on a research agreement. We notified them right away what we were doing. We did all the permitting kind of like we were going to be part of the county program. We didn't do it. We didn't hide anything, and we had visits. We actually had Congressman Panetta on the property and walked the property with us. We were above board and did everything what we thought was right, and didn't cause any trouble. And yet we fall in that zone, and now we can't farm unless we get a CUP.
Thank you. Commissioners? Do we have a way forward? Do we close the public hearing and go to commission discussion?
Not necessarily, but I would offer, though, is if the go get a CUP is because the county wants to add additional conditions for livability among neighbors and different industries. If we know what those handful of things are, you could make them a second level of standards that, yes, they come with expense, but they don't come with the timeline of you go get a CUP and go to the planning commission. You build your fence, or you have your smell removing devices or things like that. So those things could be thought through. So what I'd ask the industry is, are you scared of an uncertain, long, indefinite process? Or is the intimidation that you'd have to do additional things that the person deeper and remote in the county doesn't have to do? That, you know, per plant, you now are having to pay for fence, you're having to pay for, you know, odor removal equipment and different filters. So I think that might be a healthy discussion, because it could go there, right?
Through the chair.
Yeah.
I would like to see the language regarding the San Benito wine hospitality priority area removed as far as an exclusion zone, and simply not allow any activity within a certain distance of a winery or tasting facility, etc. It seems like that would...
Similar to the 1 mile setback from residential districts?
Correct. It seems like that would be more specific as opposed to blocking off an entire area, because if somebody has to get a CUP, you might as well just ban them.
Okay, I follow you. I need to ask a question rhetorically, though, and we deal with it in planning and land use all the time. If you did such a thing, and so you've got the wineries operating legally, you've got a hemp grow operating more than 1 mile, but now you've got someone reinvesting and wanting to build a new wine tasting room, and it happens to be less than 1 mile from the person that just invested in hemp and wants to grow at least 5 rotations over 5 years, that they've capitalized that out. Do you disallow the new winery? Or within its own district? Or do you allow it to come in and just say, well, this one's a one-off, and with our Right to Farm Act, they knew that there was going to be a smelly farm here, and they opened their wine tasting room anyway. So those are things you kind of got to think through. They have legs into other avenues.
I would say the latter. If there's a hemp operation, you don't just go in and boot them out. I would say that any tasting facility or winery that's in place as of the passing of the date of the passing of the ordinance.
Oh, no. I didn't mean to speak to boot the hemp out. You've allowed the hemp because you've reduced the restriction, but yet someone wanting to invest in the winery corridor wants a tasting room that's closer to that hemp than you would have allowed other things. Do you say, oh, wine person, now you've got a buffer from the hemp? Or do you say, buyer beware, right to farm,
Yes.
you know that this is here, and, you know,
Yeah, because it's been
The
pre-established.
latter.
so I mean, those are the kind of
It's-
awkward
it's an
discussions. like
agricultural
when you ch-
commodity.
When you change code, you know, oh, what are we gonna have to live with when someone comes in with an application 12 months from now? These are the things that happen.
Because it's
So let me temper your, if you sounds like you're offering a modification to reduce the absolute CUP restriction for that whole district to maybe being 1 mile from existing and known, was it tasting rooms, or is it the growing of grapes?
no, not the growing.
Tasting.
It was
Your tasting
find the
rooms?
language in here. It was
The hospitality
yes,
priority area.
tasting rooms,
Wine hospitality priority area.
restaurants, all that good stuff that was listed.
Well, you've got the area, then you've got facilities.
Tasting room, winery with tours, restaurant, hotel, bed and breakfast. The things that are in parentheses in 7.04.040, section E,
Okay, what page are you on there?
page 8. Well, it's not in order. Oh. Yeah, page 8.
Yeah. I want you I just want to remind folks that I'm not advocating or taking a position. I'm just talking about tools that one may use or situations one might consider as you're recommending a policy to the Board of Supervisors.
Yeah, it
That's
just,
what I'm doing right now.
it's an overly broad area to leave it the way it's currently written to me.
And at the Board of Supervisors meeting, it was indicated that they would like to have this expedited such that the hemp growers do have a solid idea of what they can move forward with. And so I think it's appropriate for us to discuss it as much as necessary in order to clarify tonight, so that it can go on to the Board of Supervisors. And so it's really important. I can see the overlay is huge. I can see Z-Best is probably 12 miles from me across the valley. And until they started changing their methods, it was horrible.
12 miles?
Yeah. It was in the Balsa, and I'm in the Anzar Hills. And so I understand how it can affect your living, and we've had other incidences around the valley going toward Pacheco Pass where there have been complaints about not being able to, exist anymore. If you cannot open your window again because something is happening, then something has to be compromised. So that's what I'm saying is let's move the discussion on to where we have some resolution here if the attendance is willing.
So if I could, it sounds, Commissioner Gibson, like you're kind of wanting to formulate a modified motion that makes a little change in the hospitality area.
Bigger change. Yes.
In the existing area.
In the wine hospitality area, yes. So
Can you clarify?
Yeah, let's
So
just take
strike 7.04.030 prohibitions. C, strike no hemp cultivation may be strike the area that says that there will be no hemp cultivation within the boundaries of the San Benito Wine Hospitality Priority Area as identified in the 2035 San Benito County General Plan, Figure 3-3 to 4, page 3 to 19, except as provided in 7.0405E. And just disallow within 1 mile of a existing permitted visitor serving wine or hospitality site. An example, tasting room, winery with tours, restaurant, hotel, bed and breakfast. At least get the conversation more focused than half the production land in the county.
Okay,
If you're
thank
gonna-
you. I'm capturing that as a motion that you're formulating, looking probably for a second or corroboration from the other commissioners.
And
Did you want to clarify that if you do allow a hemp cultivator in this area 1 mile from existing, but yet you have a future wine business that wants to open that's closer, that is to be allowed or disallowed?
well, they can do it. They just wouldn't be allowed to eject the hemp farmer. It'd be up to them if they want to purchase the land and construct a facility.
Yeah, buyer beware.
Like buying a home near a sewer plant.
Yep.
The sewer plants, are you gonna get rid of the sewer plant? No? Yeah. Yeah, or the airport?
And then as far as the distance from a public road, I would like to accept the language unless the cultivation area is fenced with a 6-foot-high fence, and reduce that to 100 feet if you build a fence. And as far as the type of fence or the screening, that language I guess we'll have to massage a little, because if you're going to plant corn or you're going to plant any kind of vegetation, it's going to take a while to grow, especially if it's, I don't know, willows or something. It's not going to be 6 foot overnight. So in the meantime, there needs to be some sort of visual barrier. But I'd like to reduce the setback to 100 feet with a fence or barrier. Otherwise, keep the 500 if you don't want to do anything.
And it was kind of lighthearted earlier, but if they've got a good fence, would you want the sign provision on the fence to remain?
No.
Let me address that, because federal law and state
Ah.
law both require signs. So, what's that? Well, yeah, at the cultivation site, but the fence is enclosing the
Yeah,
cultivation
no, I know.
site.
How many? Shouldn't have done much.
Exactly. That's true.
Let's not have huge discussion out there that
Okay.
it will turn
Right.
into
But I
a,
just wanted to clarify the point of, there is under state and federal law, a sign requirement. So exactly how large, how frequently the signs have to be posted, there's a matter of flexibility. But
Does the sign have to be posted on the perimeter fence, or can it be posted within the property itself?
well, it's surrounding the cultivation area.
So it could be right where the crop's growing.
That's right.
So it's not
Don't
visible
have to
from
put it
the
on the
public?
fence, correct?
okay.
Yes, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll confirm that with the agricultural commissioner. I think that's correct, yeah.
Okay.
Is that correct? Mhm.
So then they don't have to be on the exterior fencing. That seems like you're advertising
At that point.
trouble.
What you're trying to hide.
You're-
Okay, I'd like some advice. As we go through these things, what you had questioned earlier, shall we, page by page, move to suggest particular items that are being discussed? I mean, how,
Mr. Ellenwood, how would you
Those are
prefer
my
that?
only issues. Everything
I
else
think
was
I think the chairperson's probably going to open, I don't know, the suggested motion for discussion among some of the industry. I'm not quite sure if you wanted to do that or not. But county council, are we looking for wordsmithing each line? Are we looking for hearing the intent from the motion makers or the motion that passes to shape some language for the board?
Well, I think the commission needs to identify the recommended changes and discuss that, make a motion to adopt whichever recommended changes, and then that will be incorporated in the resolution making recommendations to the board, which we wouldn't be preparing tonight. We'd have to prepare that for you, for the chair to sign
Okay.
in a day or two.
All right, so just to reiterate, almost like we did for the Sunny Slope Christian Church with the modified language, you will clarify a motion and a second and an intent of how you want this ordinance to perform.
But
Yeah,
is that page per page? Or do
No,
you want
no,
this
not
all?
necessarily. I think it's idea by idea of which has
That's
been,
what I'm saying.
or
Mhm.
Okay.
something like that.
Okay.
Is there any further, I'll take a whack at it. Making a motion.
Because,
Um,
careful, because some of the language gets twisted around in other sections.
So, yeah, that's what I'm gonna try to make
That's
it
what, yeah.
somewhat vague, and then staff can
Well,
Mhm. Okay.
unpackage it.
Packages where they kind of, if it's twisted somewhere else, change it.
Yeah.
Commissioner Gibson?
So I have the two changes, one with respect to the wine hospitality area, and the other with respect to the setback, reduced setback with fencing. Are there others?
No, not for me.
would we just be a matter of practice that a wine business moving closer than a mile to a hemp business in the wine hospitality, they just could? We don't need to clarify language?
That's necessary.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
It's just buyer beware. If there's an existing hemp farm and you buy, that's on you, just like any other issue. Sounds fair to me.
So I'm just a staff person, this is your commission, but it might be, since it's what was written and distributed to the public for consideration in ad hoc committees, and there's a suggested change on the floor, maybe you wanted to go one more time out to see if there's a comment before taking an action?
Is there any public comment about the discussion that we have had? And can we move forward? Yes, sir. Please.
Yes, please.
Well, I'm not sure if this is any different, but we still have the mile on there from the town, and I'm thinking we should take the mile off.
Wait a minute, take an inch, give a mile, something like this?
Well, I'm not clear whether my two farms are within a mile of the farm. Have they been taken out or not taken out? If you have a big fence, is the mile still pertinent?
The odor doesn't stop at a fence. That's the issue regarding being close to a town, I believe. Not to mention the crime that has followed some of the grows. I think the intent was to keep it away from the cities.
Union and Riverside.
That's within a mile.
Yeah, that's
That's
pretty
within a mile.
iffy area.
Yeah.
Well, actually, having talked with county officials, I think the crime may be just as big in some of the other locations. They just chose not to call the sheriff's department. So reported crimes should be the, and I think, so farmers didn't know that they would be penalized by calling the sheriff's department. My tenants complained that most of the theft were homeless people coming out of the river, and so we've got a problem that the county hasn't addressed, and now our farm's being penalized for those behaviors. Anyway.
Thank you.
I just want to clarify for the record that we wouldn't be here today, most of these people, if the ad hoc committee would have asked the stakeholders to participate in the writing of this ordinance. Because that's what I have been asking out there, and I asked somebody here tonight, because I thought he would have been, because he's been in this for the longest. He was not invited to be a stakeholder. If you're going to have an ad hoc committee and you are assigned by your supervisors, I would ask that you please reach out to your supervisors, not just on this issue, but on other issues, that those supervisors are making the decisions for the entire community that includes the stakeholders, and they're not reaching out to the stakeholders to ask questions because they're the ones who have the answers, as well as may potentially offer other questions, so that we don't come back in 6 months or a year from now because the community is complaining. And we know that ordinances, just because you sign it today, doesn't mean that 6 months from now you can't come back and you can amend it. So please, to your supervisors, when there's an ad hoc committee, when something so important like this is, have the stakeholders participate. It's very important, especially because this is an economic development to the county.
Thank you. Yes, I appreciate it when it's,
Okay, so we'll be growing in, my
kept
name's
in a short
Emiliano
time.
Reyna. We'll be growing in greenhouses. It'll be mostly a nursery. So are we still gonna be, we need that fence? Would the greenhouse itself be the barrier?
I think it's been pretty well
covered.
established with the cannabis ordinances and such that there be sufficient,
Buffer between the greenhouse and the road?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I actually, excuse me, through the
Excuse
chair, I think you actually get, instead of just the visual or an odor or the security, when you've got a covered, secured structure like that, you get both.
Yes.
It's just generally the economics aren't there like they are for cannabis.
Correct, correct.
Okay, thank you.
We need,
Because the greenhouse will be covered.
it'd be an indoor grow.
Yeah, indoor grow,
Correct.
yeah.
Correct.
Are you saying, do you need a fence around the greenhouse?
Don't think so. Don't think so. Just cover,
Oh, correct, correct. Okay, this is for the hemp.
yes.
Of course, thank you. So I guess it does not apply. Otherwise, they would have said so to begin with. I have not seen that a fence is necessary around a greenhouse on a hemp grow.
People are gonna think it's cannabis.
Well, they still have to put a sign up, right?
Dear criminal, don't steal from us.
I have a question.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for recognizing, Madam Chair. So with respect to the fencing on the public roads, if you have one portion of your parcel that is on a public road, but the remainder of it is not, does the entirety of the parcel need to be fenced, or only that portion that is immediately adjacent to the road?
Good question.
Because, I mean, fencing 30 acres,
Yeah.
that is gonna be economically, it will render the farm useless, right? I mean, the fence itself, 6 foot high, all the way across on 1,000 feet, that's gonna be expensive as heck anyway. So, could we get some clarity on that, please?
Oh, thank you. Your agricultural commissioner is raising her hand.
Oh, very good. Thank you.
Saved by the bell.
What I wanted to clarify was there is no fencing requirement for hemp.
Right,
The
right.
fencing was to allow a reduced setback.
There you go, cool.
Very good.
If I may, the economics of doing this, if you lose 500 feet from the road, right, in every direction, to your point earlier, the economics of actually farming hemp on a particular site are gonna be so negatively impacted, right? All of a sudden, you've taken a 30-acre site and potentially making it a 18-acre site? Right, well, okay, 5, right?
Let the agriculture,
You're talking about the setback from the public road. If the rest of your acres are not adjacent to the public road, that is the only setback
Okay,
required.
so I still have the question regarding, do you need to fence the entirety of the property or just the portion that it is immediately adjacent to the road? For the setback.
You answered the question.
Adjacent to the road.
But no,
It's the setback
It's-
from the public road.
Yes.
Keep it out
Not
of
the
public
entire
view,
field.
away from,
okay, so you only, I just, if you could make it clear. Huh?
It's either or. You do the 500 feet or the fence.
But the fence around the entirety or just on the road? Okay, fine.
We'll
I'm
take a
sorry,
vote.
I just want to make, you know what, this is a big dollar. It's a big dollar amount. I just want to make sure I'm
Just the public
absolutely
road.
clear on it.
Don't
Right,
have
so
to fence
what
on the
I'm
property.
hearing tonight is, it's only adjacent to the road.
Yes.
Correct.
Thank you.
Correct.
may I ask, Along your property, do you have a dirt road on each side of that? Do you have ranch access along there that
In the
that
back,
comes off
yes,
onto?
and so I actually need to measure from the back side of it to whether or not, I don't think it's immediately adjacent, but
Yeah, I would,
County road or a state highway?
mhm,
Yeah.
okay.
That's-
All right.
Have
If
we,
there's no further discussion, we will bring it back to the board and formulate some verbiage.
have we massaged the discussion enough to figure out what the verbiage has to be?
I don't
Or are
think
we
we're,
gonna go through line by line and try to,
no, according to council here, I don't think we're gonna go line by line, but I
Good.
believe we've captured the
The
notes
intent.
for your suggested motion, so with, you correct me if I'm putting words in your mouth that are not what you intend. But you said section 7.0403, strike the provisions that say no hemp cultivation within the boundaries of the wine hospitality area, but craft the language in such a way that the restriction is for hemp grows to be prohibited within 1 mile of an existing tasting room, wine hospitality area, bed and breakfast, and those types of things.
I would encompass more than grows.
Oh, the
Drying, processing,
Drying.
manufacturing, possibly even go as far as storage. And
drawing
just
from
keep
the-
all
the terms
activities
of, I
away.
think, all the hemp entity, yeah.
Yes,
the
just to
people.
to protect our wine industry. I
Mhm.
think it's not an overstep to go that far, but as far as the entire wine area, that's a huge overstep.
And I believe
in
your
my
motion
opinion.
also wanted to entertain the flexibility of not being hard and rigid with the 500 or 1,000-foot setback, but that you would allow fencing within the front areas, fencing and screenings.
Within 100 feet of the county or state highway, county road or state highway,
So we'll still get a 100-foot setback?
With
That
a
a fen- That's as close as a fence could get?
with the fence.
Okay.
Is that
I
my
didn't-
understanding
I didn't
from
understand
the-
that earlier, but I understand you now.
We want this thing to work for everybody, so
No, I don't know
it's
if there
helpful
were-
if we get the growers of all such commodities here.
Good evening, Doug Williams. We have existing fences, some of us, and they're right on the county right-of-way. But my understanding is we'll plant the hemp 100 feet back from the fence.
Yes.
Correct.
Some of the fences, the fence does not have to be 100 foot from the right-of-way. It should be on the road.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, just to clarify.
Yeah, the setbacks on the actual cultivation and
Yes, yes.
Grow
It-
plenty
other
of trees in there.
The
activities.
100-foot setback will be inside the fence
Mhm.
on the farmer's
Yes.
property. Thank you.
See? There we go.
We have one more comment.
And, but,
Mr. Weir.
I've got just a real quick clarification question on, in that, with the wine hospitality areas, basically the 3 wineries that are in the Cianic area in proximity to the drying facility. If that drying facility can meet the smell requirements to satisfy everybody, can that drying facility still exist? Drying facility, storage, Christian? Yeah, and that was my question. I mean, if they,
With the CUP.
the people that are operating that facility, if they can mitigate the smell, can they still do what they need to do?
With the CUP, correct?
Yeah, okay.
That's what we're trying to
With
get
the
to. We're trying to,
CUP. Okay,
we're
that,
trying to narrow the reason to having to get a CUP.
no,
to
absolutely.
A focus.
Robert, I was just wanted a clarification. Christian, go ahead. Hey.
You know, just, I wasn't going to get up and make another statement, being that this touches on our interest directly. Although smell was a very significant contributing element of sort of generalized complaint for our area, there was also trash, crime, all the other constituent elements, which are not 100% smell associated. So it's a broader front of complaint than just that one issue.
Okay. And then the CUP process will allow
Yeah,
that to
would
be
allow the
vetted. and-
discussion.
Mhm.
One other thing that I would mention, just representing the Cienega wine growers, the wineries where I am, the carve-out for the wine industry is large, and we wouldn't have any issues having that trimmed back at all. I do think it's onerous on the growers.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was significant.
So we're good. Okay, I make a motion to adopt Resolution 2019 next with the amendments as discussed.
And I second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
How about that?
May I? Oh, I meant to say this earlier. And perhaps it could be, our motion could be amended, I don't know. But the character of the county is extremely important. If one is driving down the road and you see a 6-foot fence right beside the road, how is that going to affect the character of the county? I mean, consider you're driving down Cienega, and you're coming along all these nice oak trees and Sweet Road, and boom, fence. It's like, I believe it would be important to, it would be important to specify that some kind of growth be put in front of fences to eventually grow up, to break the monotony of a fence line of that kind of blocking character. Sir?
Thank you. Some of us in the vegetable industry, we were forced to put up the fences because of food safety. To keep the deer out, the pigs, we didn't want to put them up. We had to put them up. And I mean, we've had buffers from livestock areas, 400, 500 feet, that we cannot grow vegetables because of the stringent food safety laws. So no, we don't like them either. But hey, we can plant sunflowers. I mean, it's prettier. I mean, you can be, there's a lot of different things you can do to try to cover up that ugly fence. So, but we had to put up the fences, a lot of us. Certain areas of the county more so than others, just because of the wildlife. Right, thank you.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Item
Or,
6?
no, wait, we're done.
Item 6?
So the public hearing items have concluded for the evening.
Yes, sir.
The commission should, I just planted that discussion item, should you wish to speak to it at all, but I have nothing further to add. I just wanted to land it there about the, if you wanted to discuss approaches to general plan implementation and staffing levels at the RMA.
Oh, okay.
Do you have some
Well,
any discussion?
through the chair, I just wanted to be kept up to date as far as where we are in the budgeting process to make sure that we don't have another year go by without getting the general plan implemented.
Before we continue this discussion, we should probably let the audience know that we're just going into a discussion of procedures and a variety of things that concern the Planning Commission. I think our process with sorry.
You're free to leave.
Is done.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming. This will go to the Board of Supervisors next, and they will consider what we've suggested.
No, it should be
2 weeks.
next week.
Next week.
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Ask Richard.
Should be done right away. Can't-
Let me address that if I may.
Excuse me?
Let me address
Council is
the
addressing-
issue of the next action to be contemplated.
Ladies and gentlemen, our meeting is not over. Your item is, though.
Can we have order in the chamber?
You may want to hear counsel.
Okay, after the resolution is adopted and prepared, We have to give a 10-day public hearing notice published in the newspaper before the Board of Supervisors can hear this matter. So, that will depend on the publication dates from the newspaper and when the next meetings of the board. But I expect that it will be, and I don't have the schedule of the board hearings for the month of February,
The 4th and 18th.
the 4th and 18th. So it's more likely to be on the 18th than the 4th to meet the publication date for the public hearing notice.
So does the moratorium end?
The moratorium does not end until the Board of Supervisors repeals it, and they would repeal it upon the adoption of the amendments. What's that?
Would that be the 18th? If it's an agenda item on the 18th?
If it's an agenda item on the 18th,
Yeah,
it
it has
would
to
be
be agenda.
adopted on that date. It would not be effective for 30 days after that. The new ordinance would not be effective until after that, but that time period allows for someone to file a lawsuit if they want to challenge the adoption of the ordinance, but that's what the time frame is.
See, so the problem was like with the seed propagation and the seed purchasing, if we can't take the seed to the Ag Commission, we can't get our little baby plants started. So if we're waiting until March,
Well, you have to get the seed cultivars approved. The Ag Commissioner could probably best address that.
the Ag Commissioner, then we're fine.
Well, it's only where, it's only the cultivation of it. So that's something we need to clarify with the Ag Commissioner's office.
Propagation versus cultivation?
That's correct.
That's fine.
So
As long as the propagation can get started.
just for my understanding and for the information of the planning commissioners or staff who don't necessarily understand the process, hemp cultivation for CBD production is based on planting seedlings or clones and not planting seed as a field crop. And so you're contracting to buy starts prepared by someone else.
Start it ourselves.
Or start it yourselves. Right.
Okay.
Either or, but the seed has to be paid in full.
Yeah, but we have to make the purchase order. That's what we're talking about.
We have to pay in full, and it's non-refundable.
I understand that, and different folks may have different constraints about that. If you're in the white area, if your cultivation is not in any of the exclusion zones, then you're not going to have a problem. If you're within the exclusion zone, we have to wait and see what the board ultimately decides. I mean, you can go to the board and say, you need to reduce the area of the exclusion zone. The board could decide to do that or not. I mean, we don't have that certainty yet.
Well, it's like we're up off the ball side of a landlocked area, we don't fall into any of the constraints that have been talked about here.
So, yeah.
But we, spend $500,000 on our seeds and stuff the first of the month. And it's non-refundable.
Yeah, and I think you should have some level of understanding of what the risk is as a result of what has transpired here tonight and what's going to be recommended to the board. No guarantees. But.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Hard to spend that money without permitting. True.
Yep.
Farming's always had those kind of, hasn't it? That's endemic. Yeah. And in land use, we make everybody happy all the time. Yeah. We're doing a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The red card, is that what you had?
Can I borrow the red card?
You want the red card?
Can I borrow it?
So going through the chair, going back to item 6, the last item on the agenda. If the commission could just be informed on a regular basis, I guess, of where we are as far as the 2 full-time senior planning positions and making sure that we get it done this budget cycle.
Did you wish to maybe call the RMA director and invite yourself to a lunch or something like that? That
Sure.
might be helpful.
Sure.
That might be helpful.
Okay.
Just as a point of information, the county's adopting a new platform for its budget process, and it's called OpenGov. Staff is being trained on it at the end of the month, and each department, will be posting its initial budget requests through that. That's governed by the department director deciding what should be within the budget request for that department. And then that goes through a public comment process, and the board makes decisions about the budgeting based on priorities. The board just undertook a significant compensation study comparing staff salaries in San Benito County with similar counties and surrounding areas, and classification of job descriptions. And one priority for the board would be to fund a transition to more competitive salaries for existing staff without necessarily accommodating expansion of staff. So those are going to be conflicting policy decisions that the board will be considering. And that will impact your concerns.
Just to be clear, Commissioner Gibson, and through the chair, is the RMA director or any others there have not involved me in budget discussions or those things. I have been involved in past. I've shared directly with you all for some of my previous efforts and put a little paint on the map, so you might have enough to talk about with your electeds and the appointeds, or come into my department and meet with the director. So it's not, it has not been put on my plate to do by
Okay.
my workload.
Thank you. Thank you for the information.
Any further discussion? Any questions?
I make a motion to adjourn?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Oh, excellent work.
Microphones off?